look at all of the hot topics in HR.
Whether it's passive talent or it's active talent.
That's a soft skill that really gets undersold in the hiring process.
How to manage in the virtual environment.
You get a diverse cultured group of people, it's a win-win for everybody.
More conversion from candidate leads.
What does that look like in this new virtual world?
Welcome everyone to Talent Experience Live, my favorite part of every single week, coming to you live every Thursday at noon Eastern time on LinkedIn and YouTube. Of course, this is your weekly look at hot topics in HRs, interviews with leaders in the industry, as well as hot new HR tech, which I promise we have to show you today. So don't end or hop off after the interview. This is covering everything that you need to know in recruitment, talent acquisition, as well as talent management. But before we get started, I always love to hear where everyone is from. So definitely hop into the comment and chat section and let me know where you're from. I see Samantha is joining us from New Jersey, Barbara from Florida. Welcome everyone. And while you are in the comment section, please feel free to like, subscribe, and share this content. We're live every Thursday, as I mentioned, just a few moments before. And of course, if you're not able to catch the full episode, you can always catch it, the replay, either on YouTube or phenom.com/blogs. We share some nice little snippets there for you. It's super easy, super digestible, super wonderful for you to share out to your teams. But today's topic and the topic at hand, I feel like the last few episodes haven't necessarily been doom and gloom, but they've been very COVID-centric about making it through the pandemic, as well as what life looks like after the pandemic. So today we're going to change things up just a little bit and share a success story, a real feel-good, heartwarming story around internal mobility. So new job, same place, a firsthand internal mobility success story. Jen Thomas is joining us from Ambler, PA. Welcome. And the reason why I love talking about internal mobility is, number one, it's something that's very close and near and dear to my heart. I consider myself an internal mobility success story, but oftentimes in talent acquisition and really HR specifically, we focus on attracting talent into our organizations. We have huge budgets and really spend countless hours working tirelessly to get talent into our organizations to make them successful. But once they get there, a lot of times it almost feels like they're forgotten about. They are the ugly stepchild, if you will. And just like any other living thing, they want to grow. They want to continue to move forward within their careers. And that is what today is all about. I see we have Andy joining us from Lakeland, Florida. Jonathan Dale chimes in the comment section. Internal mobility and talent marketplace for hiring from within are so important right now. Cannot wait to hear the story. And I am excited to share that story with you too. But in the sense of Talent Experience Live, we always love to kick things off with an icebreaker question. So I'm going to put the onus back on you for a moment and ask you, what was your first job? What was that first real life work experience that you had? And did you have any internal mobility success? Mine, I thought you'd never ask, was of course being a dishwasher. It did not necessarily pan out well for me. I didn't move up within that organization, but I am still a firm believer of you have to work into a restaurant in order to be allowed to eat out at restaurants, because that's just something everyone has to deal with. So chime in with what your first job was, and we will kick things off with our first guest. We have two guests today. So like I said, stick around until the end. We will now bring on Lauren Burkle, Talent Experience Specialist at Phenom, and she'll talk a little bit about her internal mobility success story. Lauren, how are you?
Hey, Devin, how are you doing?
I am doing well. It's Thursday, which means it is very close to Friday. I see some people are chiming in with their first jobs. George says he started at Hershey Park, which sounds like a fun job. I always enjoy going there, but I'm not sure about working. Lots of screaming children. Sounds like a lot of Zoom meetings that I've been on lately. Jen Thomas says that she worked at a retail surf shop. And another individual says that they worked as a lifeguard and it was not their best choice, which is a little scary for someone that's looking after people in the ocean in order to survive. But Lauren, as tradition here, you are not safe from the icebreaker question. So please tell me, what was your first job?
Yeah, so I was actually a sandwich artist at Subway. So I actually spent about 4 years there. So definitely a loyal employee, but didn't move up the chain there at all.
A sandwich artist. I had not heard of that. I've heard of lots of creative job titles. People call receptionists director of first impressions. But I imagine that you, of course, were the Picasso of your local Subway restaurant, which is awesome to hear. So, Lauren, I teased a little bit at the top of the show that you have been an internal mobility success story. Would you care to share a little bit of your journey and how your career has grown?
Yeah, absolutely. So I began at Phenom in August 2019 now. So it's been about a year and a half. But when I first began at Phenom, I began in an entry-level sales SDR role. So since then, it was very made clear throughout the entire hiring process that that role is great for growth and development. Not only in sales in general, but there was opportunity to evolve your career at Phenom in general, so looking at other departments. So I immersed myself fully into that role. I did have some sales and marketing background through other internships that I completed. But around 6 months into my role, I began conversations with my manager about where she saw me, where I saw myself, what were my career aspirations. And officially in November, I transitioned over to the HR department here as a talent experience specialist.
Congratulations. That's awesome. I myself came from an SDR sales development background, so I understand the grind that goes into it. I think lots of people start off in those entry-level roles where it's how many calls are you doing, how many emails are you sending out a week, and it takes a toll. So I understand, kind of that little itch that you had, around that 6 to 8 month mark. But my question for you is, as tradition on this show, we always do a bit of a LinkedIn deep dive, and your background is super strong, for how recently you graduated in sales and marketing. So my question for you is, oftentimes organizations look at internal mobility as a linear line, right? You start off in your entry-level role, maybe you jump up to account manager, maybe it's an account executive. How did you find your new role in HR, and also how did you upskill for that based upon your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, with that background, I was open to the opportunities, say, within the marketing department, in sales. Overall, I'd say I kept an open mind throughout that process and looking at what next steps were best for me. But it's funny, actually during college, a buddy of mine actually suggested that I would be a really good fit for HR. So now looking back, I think they're absolutely right. But again, just keeping that open mind throughout that whole journey was super important. But this position specifically was brought to my attention a little over a year mark, and especially during that COVID time, definitely positive that there were future career opportunities past this SDR role. So just when I'm looking at skills that I was able to transfer over from that entry-level sales role into my new role now, those included things such as time management, attention to detail is really important when I'm looking at sending out campaigns to candidates currently. But what was most, I'd say what drew me specifically to this role was the talent marketing piece, going back to my marketing background. So that's what really drew me to this position now.
It's awesome to hear that there are so many transferable skills within organizations, and I think that is the case for a ton of different roles, right? You mentioned the marketing in not only in human resources and that ability to attract talent, but also marketing is a huge aspect of sales. Even though the two teams for a lot of organizations don't seem to get along, there are a lot of similarities, right? Of making your product look attractive. Now, it's as a millennial and our sort of generation, we oftentimes get a bad rap of being job hoppers, hopping from company to company. And I know that there's a ton of statistics around that. I believe one of the latest ones that I saw were that around 80% of individuals look for an internal role initially versus looking externally. Now, since you obviously transitioned internally, what did that look like, and how was that experience different from when you first joined Phenom from an external perspective?
Yeah, so again, going back to my initial interview process, I knew the opportunity was there to expand my career. So looking at Phenom's product, we offer an internal mobility piece looking at Phenom's employee experience. So just having that hub available for me to log into, seeing what jobs were available, what my skills that I already have matched up against those job descriptions, even having an integration with our learning management system. I saw some recommended courses for me to take. So for example, there was a talent marketing course right there on the page in front of my eyes that I could hop into to upskill right then and there. So just creating that seamless experience, especially now in the working from home environment. I can't per se say I was interested in joining the marketing team. I can't just hop on over to your desk these days and just introduce myself and say hi. So definitely helps out in this work from home environment.
If you were to hop over to my desk right now and knock on our door, I think that I would immediately assume it was an Amazon package. So thank you for utilizing the tools and keeping socially distant and compliant in that sense. But you're absolutely right. It's a completely different world. My experience from when I transitioned out of a sales role into marketing was conversational. It was me, going up and throwing my name into a hat, which is easier to do in an environment where everyone is together. In a virtual world, it's a little bit more challenging. Wanting to reach out to another department and kind of put your hand up and say, hey, I'm interested in this role down the line, oftentimes strikes fear in the employees to say, should I be doing this? Does this say that I'm unhappy with the company? Does this say that I'm unhappy in my role? So my next question for you is, you mentioned kind of hopping around on the internal mobility and internal marketplace through the employee experience. Was that something that you did regularly? Was it a monthly thing? Did you just throw your hands up one day after cold calling 150 people and say, that's it, I need to look for something because I am tired of getting hung up on? What did that kind of look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say more so after 6 months, a year, that time frame, I would log into it pretty monthly just to see what new jobs were available. But again, looking at the time frame of it, we were in a pandemic, so I wasn't seeing that many job postings available and to move within the company. So when this specific position was brought to my attention, it all happened pretty quickly. So began interviews and transitioned over fairly quickly to the new team.
That's awesome. I love hearing that even though there were some challenges with the pandemic, opportunities were still around. You were still able to have those conversations, and probably a little bit easier once you knew that they were available rather than trying to create a position or do something along those lines. For those of you joining us right now, we are on with Lauren Burkle, talent experience specialist at Phenom. If you have any questions, comments, please hop into the chat. Make your voice heard. That's why we do these things live. I see a couple of chats coming through right now. Looks like you have a fan with Courtney saying, woo, LB. And I thought that was weird. My voice cracked there. Brendan Matthews chimes in and says, another great success story of growing within. Nicely done, Lauren. And another individual says, great example of leaders embracing the evolution of the employee's life cycle, which is absolutely true. Now, Lauren, I think you had a little bit of a leg up on understanding the employee experience in internal mobility than some others because you're familiar with the Phenom product and how it works and how employees can use it. But I'm going to take you back to a time far, far ago in a galaxy far away, which is 2019, right? You're going through the application process. What did internal mobility mean to you then versus what it means to you now that you've actually experienced some growth?
Yeah, I'd say before entering Phenom, internal mobility, when it comes to mind, was more of a move up the chain within your own department. But now, since working here at Phenom, and especially throughout that interview process, I had a deeper understanding that not only are there opportunities to move up, say, within the sales department. I know many of my colleagues have been promoted to team leads or moved on to looking at account management or sales executive roles, but that just wasn't the path for me. But there were those opportunities, again, to look at other departments. So looking at internal mobility cross-functionally now is my view on it as well.
That's awesome. And I know that oftentimes it's very cost effective for organizations as well. It's much easier to transition somebody into the role when they're already familiar with your company, probably your product, your culture, and everything along those lines. So the ramp up period, I'm sure, is a little bit easier. Jeremy chimes in with a question for you, which is, what is the highlight of your typical workday? And I'm going to put a caveat to that and say, what was your highlight as an SDR? And then what was your highlight now in your new role?
So my favorite part of the SDR role was interacting with those prospects daily, just learning more about them as a whole in the HR industry, as well as what were their problems, just getting that face-to-face time with them. And now in my role, I really enjoy getting to actually work in our product. So in the SDR role, I was obviously pitching it, but I was eager to get my hands working in it. So that's what I love working in day to day now.
That's awesome. And it's probably super great for some of your colleagues on your older team to be able to ask somebody with experience in the product itself, right? Rather than having to circle around to a product team or dig through any sort of credentials. You're kind of an expert by working with it daily, and you have that relationship that may be intimidated for somebody who is new to the organization or who's only been there for a few months. They say, hey, I know Lauren's working on the CMS and the career site. Let me ask her how easy it is to change photos, or if you need JavaScript background in order to mess with the career site or anything like that. And you have those answers simply for them. So Jeremy, thank you for the question. Now, Lauren, you're working with the product on a daily basis. My next question is a bit of a loaded one, if you will, because I know that Phenom has the best product out there. However, how can internal mobility get even better for candidates, employees, and organizations as a whole?
I really think now more than ever, since we are mostly all working from home, going back to having that internal hub for employees to all log on to is super crucial to really demonstrate the power of a product like ours. Again, it's just crucial now that we are, since working remote, just having that internal place for us to go.
No, it's certainly, and I think the other big aspect of that is being able to share success stories like yours and like mine for people who are interested in that long-term path with an organization. I said a lot of individuals get a bad rap for being a little bit too job hoppy. So when they jump to an organization, they're probably looking to be there for the long haul. They want to hear about the success stories. A lot of them want to grow their careers. It sounds like you've made great use of the tech and your time. I mean, getting promoted just shortly after a year is awesome. If you could do all of this over again, kind of the SDR role and potentially finding out about new positions, what would you change and why?
I would say just immersing myself more so into the tool than I was. To be candid, there's so many learnings available to us that personally I'm not taking full advantage of. And it wasn't until coming to the time of looking for that next step in my career, that I was exploring those learnings available to upskill. So just being more proactive in that and making a priority to keep pushing myself every day to learn something new when it comes to what we already have to offer within Phenom, looking at our learning management system there as well.
So that brings me to another question that immediately pops into my head. There's so much talk around burnout during the pandemic, right? It's almost like boundaries no longer exist because when we were all working in an office, everyone kind of had the understanding, I'll handle that once I get into work, or I'll handle that tomorrow. And now tomorrow is tonight. I'll handle that when I get into work is as soon as you roll out of bed. So when you talk about really upskilling and exploring the LMS system, what was successful for you and what was a good time that you did that? Did you kind of hash it out at lunch? Was it something that you did after hours? What did that look like? Because people's days are overwhelmed right now.
Yeah, for me personally, I made it a priority at the end of my day when I've already wrapped up everything that needed to be done in the sales role, hitting my numbers for the day, you could say. But again, just making it end of the day for me is when I blocked out that time.
That's good. It's almost like a decompressor, right? I'm not encouraging that anyone do their learning with a glass of wine or a beer or anything like that. But that sounds like a nice wrap up to the day rather than, from an SDR perspective, hammering out those last 15 calls in order to hit your numbers. So be productive during the day, and then at the end of the day, kind of do some upskilling and learning. With that upskilling conversation, is it possible that some of the skills that you learned through the LMS system, you were able to apply and really leverage in your day-to-day role as an SDR? Like, were they transferable, I guess is the best way I want to ask that.
Yeah, they were definitely transferable. Again, starting out in that sales role, I wholeheartedly immersed myself into that, furiously taking notes, all the trainings that we start out with help us succeed in that role, and just overall remaining curious throughout the process, just asking questions to your team along the way. But now transitioning over to the HR team, all those skills I gained have only led to my success here. But I'm still immersing myself in learnings each day, attending webinars, weekly conversations when it comes to talent marketing, just to expand my knowledge, because there is a lot more that I can learn and upskill along the way here.
Yeah, I know from my experience, when I transitioned into the role, I tried to really scratch that creative itch that I had. And it gave me a leg up in the SDR role because I was able to send over a goofy meme on Friday versus maybe a competitor who is just sending over a plain text. And I've had some conversations with people who've transitioned from an SDR role into customer success. And all of that is based upon relationship building and really learning how to get the best out of your client. But that can be applied as well to a sales development role. And I think this applies to organizations all over the place, no matter what industry you're in, that there are transferable skills that you want to encourage your employees to continue to grow in order to not only be successful today, but also tomorrow. So the transition into the new role, how seamless was it for you? Was it something that you were an SDR on Friday and then a talent experience specialist on Monday? How did that work? And were there any improvements that you would suggest for organizations transitioning some of their employees?
Yeah, I mean, my experience I thought was pretty seamless. From about the time when I was offered the position to when I first started, it was a 2-week time frame. So I was able to transition my accounts over to the new rep who would be taking them over, just making them aware of the best accounts to target and whatnot. But it was good timing with the end of the quarter. So it just overall made sense for that switch over to the new team now. But overall, I was a little nervous since working remote, learning a new job virtually here. The team has been...
Sorry, some of the crowd was getting a little excited about your answer there. That's awesome. I mean, I love that idea, and I'm sure that your colleagues and your coworkers that we're working with on a regular basis, we're also excited because you've built relationships and because you're familiar with the product. When it comes to handing over accounts or really handing over some duties and responsibilities, that's something that I know as an SDR I was always excited about. It's more to really plow forward and to attack. And also it's great to see somebody being successful. So before I let you go, Lauren, this has been super, super helpful. And thank you so much for joining us today. I have to ask you, even though it's early, and even though I'm sure you're still getting acclimated to your new role, what's next for you? Where's your next goal? I'm a firm believer in saying, you always want to be striving towards something. So what do you have lined up and what are your goals?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, I'm learning a lot each and every day. So fully moving over to just a talent marketing role would be on the horizon. But, I could set high goals and strive for the next chief people officer role, CHR role, set those expectations high and see where I end up.
I won't tell Brad that you're gunning for CPO, but I know we don't have a CHRO yet, so maybe that's it for you. But thank you so much once again. I'll let you get back to your busy day and continuing to learn. Kessa chimes in and says upskilling is so important to increase employee satisfaction and motivation. And Lauren, I think that you are an excellent example of that. So thank you once again. I appreciate it. Hopefully we'll be back in the office soon. We can do this in our fancy new studio. But in the meantime, we'll see you soon. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Thanks so much, Devin.
Absolutely. So that was Lauren Burkle, our talent experience specialist here at Phenom, talking about her success story from sales development into talent experience specialist and hopefully a CHRO day. Hopefully the powers that be are listening. But I promised at the beginning of the program that we were going to show some product. We were going to show what this looks like and how Lauren was able to make that journey. So without any more hesitation, I'm going to bring on Jesus Latour-Sokis from our product management team to walk us through internal mobility within the employee experience, as well as career pathing and what that looks like. What's up, man? How are you?
What's up, Devin? How you doing? Happy Wednesday.
It's Thursday, man.
Happy Thursday. It's the new world we live in. We don't know what day it is.
I saw Jen Thomas chime into the chat with a wine glass. Maybe you've started to hit the sauce already as well. I'm not sure. Either way, I know you are fully equipped to walk us through a little bit about the employee experience, specifically the internal talent marketplace and internal mobility. Friend of the show, as always, we love to hear from you, but I want to get into the meat and potatoes of this. Would you be able to show us what this looks like and potentially how an internal mobility experience or employee experience looks different than that of a candidate?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump into it. So I'm going to share my screen. If you can just confirm that you can see it, that would be perfect. Can you see my screen okay?
Just a moment. It should be popping up. Maybe the computer thinks it is Wednesday as well. There we go. We got it.
Awesome. So yeah, let's jump into it. So from an internal mobility perspective, so let me just sort of give you a background at least of our employee experience perspective, what internal mobility means to us and what career pathing means to us, and sort of chime that into how Lauren got to her new position. But the goal here, and the goal of many companies, I should say, not only just us Phenom, is really to upskill and retain talent within the company. And that's really where our employee experience tools come into play. We really want to give and empower your employees to be able to look internally before they ever look externally, right? The goal is, what jobs do I have available to my disposal internally that I can think about moving to? And also give them the tools to identify if they are interested in this job, how do they get there? So we'll kind of run through that product and just sort of give that experience from an employee perspective and how that all really plays out within our internal mobility and career pathing tools.
Jesus.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jump into anything. What immediately I see is recommended jobs for you, and I see your name on the right-hand side of the screen. How does it know what you're looking for?
So very great question. So there is a section for employees to sort of define a couple of things about who they are. Now, of course, we can get a lot of that information already off the bat, but maybe we don't necessarily know what their long-term preferences are, or maybe they're thinking about relocating somewhere around the world. Maybe the Bahamas sounds like a great idea right now with all the snow we're getting here in Philly. But it's all very personalized to the individual employee. They'll have their own profile. And they'll even have their own settings, right? They have their own job preferences that they can sort of configure and just dictate to the system, to our AI tools, what's their area of interest? Maybe I'm a product manager and I'm really interested in moving into data science. And I want to get some of those recommendations. And maybe I'm tired of Philly and I want to move over to, I don't know, Boston. I'm not tired of Philly, by the way. I'm saying it. But we give employees that tool to really just sort of define their preferences and feed all of that data to us, so that way we can come out on top with recommendations. Now we do give the employee to also some additional tools as part of their profile, like the ability to define some of their work history, or even upload some resumes if we don't already have them. But one of the critical parts, and something that's on top of everyone's mind, is really skills, right? Everything that is related to jobs, it's all about skills and how good of a fit you are and how to get you to that next position. So within our profile system, we can also assign skills and even create skills just from work history that maybe move. So Lauren is a great example, right? Moving from SDR to this talent, this new talent position. We could automatically append skills into her profile that will really get her to that next level. And all of this, go ahead, Devin.
No, yeah. Well, one thing that Lauren mentioned was that people had always told her she would be great in HR. And when you're told that, oftentimes you may not know what title to look for or what position to look for. So when you showed some interest, she could just click human resources, and all of a sudden she served up some roles that maybe she didn't know to look at talent experience specialist as that position. She was too busy looking at the CHRO role, right? But that's awesome. I love that the skills transfer. But I apologize for cutting you off.
No worries. And even to add further to that, there's a lot of times that we've heard, and even I'm going to go ahead and flat out say that I've done this myself, where I'm so hyper focused on one specific category of jobs that maybe I don't know that I'm a great fit for something else. Devin, your point earlier about, SDRs tend to be a great fit for a marketing role, but maybe they don't know that, right? And that's sort of where some of these skills really come into play for us to make recommendations internally to get you to that next position. Maybe SDR and lead SDR isn't necessarily in your bucket of your career, but maybe SDR to talent marketers is, or maybe SDR to marketing is. We take a lot of information from the employee to really give them an idea of, hey, this might be a great fit for you. You might want to think about it, even if it's not part of their preferences, even if it's something that maybe we see as a really good potential for this employee. And that's really where our recommendations engine really kicks in and just gives them upfront, hey, we have all of these job openings. Are you interested in any of them? Are you looking to move? And that sort of gives you that idea of quickly being able to come into a system, understand what might suit you based on your skill set, and being able to just quickly come in and apply, right? There's no longer this black hole of, hey, I don't know what's open in a company, or how do I apply to another position internally? It's all within our system. We empower your employees to really do that.
But one thing that I see on this job, as well as a couple of the other jobs, is potential fit. Right. So what jumps in, what goes into a fit score? What it gives an employee the idea that, hey, I didn't think that I would be a fit for this product manager on the integration platform. How do they know, and what goes into that?
Yeah, so a lot of the things that go into sort of that potential fit, and I'll kind of scroll down to show you what that fit score looks like. But a lot of things that go into sort of identifying this fit score leads up to a couple of items. So one of them, as you see off the bat, is your skills. What skills do you have, and what skills do you need to be a better fit for this position? That's number one. Number two, we could always add things like location radius, right? If you're looking for somebody, or if you're looking for a job opportunity that's in Philadelphia and maybe not in Ireland or Europe, we want to make sure that we recommend positions based on your preferences, so location preferences, even skills preferences as well. So all of those things sort of go into us creating this skills fit or this potential fit model for employees to understand whether they're a good fit or maybe there's some work they can do to sort of get to that good fit level, essentially.
Awesome. No, and the commute from Philadelphia to Dublin sounds horrible. So I wouldn't recommend that to anyone. Yeah. But I think that's awesome that it showcases that if you are looking for someone who is on site at a specific location or something along those lines. Now, my next question is it possible for organizations to potentially hide the fit if they are looking for, a cross functional individual, somebody with maybe a sales background, but they really want to get them to that product manager. And they don't want anyone to be discouraged, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is really customizable. We can turn it on, turn it off as needed. But to your point, maybe if somebody is looking for a more cross-functional, and I think that may lead to our next topic, is really how do I get an employee who may be an SDR entry level? How do I give them options to either pursue the more linear approach or even go into a more cross-functional role where maybe they want to jump into marketing? And I think that sort of jumps over to our career pathing solution as well, which really looks at just data of the employee and job structures to understand where the employee is currently and how to get them to that next position. So I think that might be a good segue to jump into career pathing. What do you think, Devin?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to see that.
So I'm going to give you just a quick example here. We have Julia here, who's an employee of Phenom. She's brand new hire. Maybe he's been with the company maybe 6 months, and they're getting their feet wet. They understand the company, the culture, and everything, but they want to understand also how to get to that next position, what work they need to put in. Our employee experience tools really gives your employees that capability, right? We'll have the ability for Julia here to just quickly come in and create a career path. Just based on information that we have from her, or maybe even information that she wants to give, right? Maybe there's a current role, and Julia in this case is an associate product manager. She's really in that entry-level product manager. So Julia can give that position. Julia can also assign skills if we don't already have them as part of her profile. So she can pick a couple of skill sets here that she's really good at, and maybe all of them. Maybe there's more skills that she's really good at that she wants to add. And then Julia will also be able to sort of categorize her proficiency on these skills. Maybe she's really, really good at prioritizing features and creating documents, but maybe she's not quite there yet when it comes to road mapping or vision strategy. So she'll be able to quickly jump in and just sort of, I'm a 5 here, maybe I'm a 2 here, maybe I'm a 1 here. Not really sure where I fit on all the others, but maybe I just want to continue through and get that path.
That piece is super important, I think, just because when you think of technical skills, is someone proficient in Photoshop? Are they proficient in Adobe or JavaScript or something along those lines? Maybe they have some experience in it and they don't want to oversell themselves. But also, I imagine that would allow them to upskill for some of those particular things they want to be better at, rather than saying, yes, I have this skill, and then they're not prepared when they're in their interview or actually in the role.
You're absolutely right. And I'll kind of show you how that all sort of equates into this really thoughtful career path in terms of how to get an employee to the next level. But to add even one more piece to really creating that path, if a company has a personality assessment vendor that they're working with, we could even integrate with those to really just get more of a personality or even a cultural fit assessment situated for the employee to kind of give them an idea of whether they're a good fit from a personality standpoint or even culturally. But for now, I'm just going to skip the assessment just to get us there. So, now I'm at a point where I know the system knows my current role. They know my skills. We also have information on, that linear progression and maybe that not so linear progression in terms of building out your next career opportunities. So now we give really a path builder here where Julia has a couple of options now. We know she's an associate product manager. She has a lot of really great skills to move into product management next. But she could also even move into senior product manager. Maybe that's her long-term goal. But maybe product management just isn't for her. Maybe she's really more into that Photoshop side of the house, right? Maybe she wants to go into marketing manager and product marketing manager because she really wants to be part of this show with us, right? And then maybe there's a more stretch goal, right? A more cross-functional goal of, hey, I don't want to do anything with product. I don't really want to be marketing. I want to get more into like the data crunching side of the house. And maybe I want to be a business analyst or a partnership member or a finance expert, right? So we give Julia that ability to just really look at what her options are and how to get there. So Julia could come in here and pick any of these programs and we'll give her a path. In my case, Julia is very happy with being a product manager. I mean, who wouldn't be? Product management is cool. So her goal is really to get to this director of product management. That's her end goal. So I'm just going to go ahead and save, hey, this is my end goal. Here's where I started. Let me just kind of complete my path and get an idea of how I get there. So we'll give the system just a second. And here we are. We have a really powerful tool that shows what work I need to put in order to get to that next position. So, hey, I know my immediate next role and I know my long-term goal. And I know that a skills gap analysis directly here as well to understand where I'm lacking and where I could potentially work on to really get to that next role. So a couple of things that we will have off the bat is, qualifications. We talked a little bit about skills proficiency. You'll be able to, dictate your own proficiency, self-rate your proficiency here, but you can also invite a manager, your direct report or your direct manager to sort of rate your skills, right? Maybe you think you're a 1 on Photoshop, but maybe your manager has seen your work and thinks you're a 5, right? Mm-hmm. We'll be able to have some of that ability to rate those skills here. And all of that will inform us in terms of how you fit for that next role. Now, if you have an LMS system, we can recommend learning content to sort of fill the gaps in some of those skills. If you have a mentorship program through our employee experience tools, we can recommend mentors. We can recommend gigs, some of these part-time projects to really get you to that 100% to make sure that you can get to that next role. This is all a way of keeping your employees engaged, keeping them always curious, always learning, and making sure that they know that there is a path within the company to get to that next role. And here it's just that.
I love the idea that there are so many different ways to add skills within the employee experience because all of us learn differently, right? Some of us learn by doing, which may be that gigs platform. Some of us need to actually have communication and watch someone do it in order to be successful. And others can just take a course and upskill that way. So it's awesome that it's almost like a choose your own adventure for how to choose your own adventure, if you will. But Jesus, it's around that time of year where people may be doing year-end reviews or prepping for next year. My question is this accessible from the manager perspective or from that human resource perspective where they can say, hey, it's time for Julia's review. Let's see if she has anything in our career pathing platform. And we can talk through that and talk through her skills and go from there. So is it just for Julia or is it available to a broader audience?
Very great question. So yes, we are making all of this available for Julia, but also her direct manager. So her direct manager will be able to come into the system and understand where Julia stands from a skills perspective. How many gigs has she taken? Has she participated in any mentorships? Has she participated in any learning plans? The manager will be able to have visibility into all of that. So when it comes time for, succession planning or even some of these promotion conversations, the manager will have all of this at his or her disposal to really make that decision in terms of where Julia needs to go next. And hey, if she's 100% ready for this product manager role, maybe it's great. Maybe it's time to move her. And hey, guess what? Julia is open for it and she's ready for it. And the manager can sort of make that decision.
Now, my next question is, obviously she has that desire to be director of product management, but she needs to take that first step as a product manager. Will she be notified if a role like that opens up or if it isn't opened up at that exact moment so that she can say, oh, great, now's my time to throw my name into the hat, if you will? Yes. Is there a setting that she can?
Absolutely. Part of the internal mobility side of the house, and I'll kind of just jump in here real quick. Part of the internal mobility side of the house is, hey, maybe I'm interested in this product manager role, but there's not one open. I can always turn on alerts for this job specifically so that I can always be notified when one does open up. So instead of me waiting and having to log in every time, I can quickly get notified via email or even via Teams now that, hey, this position that I was really interested in, this product manager position, which is next in my path, is finally open. Now I can just come into the system easy and just quickly apply to that job.
That's awesome. I love the notification. We all live such busy lives now, and our email inboxes are full. I think I have 50 emails in my inbox right now that I have to get to after this. But two more questions for you, Jesus, before I let you get back to your very busy day. I see the chatbot in the corner. I have to ask, is that the same native chatbot that would be on an external career site, or are there some differences? Because as I mentioned at the top of the show, they're looking for different experiences, an employee versus a candidate.
Right. So very good question. So it's from a back-end perspective, it's exactly the same. The only things that are different is obviously an employee will have different actions. We know who the employee is. So some of the welcome messages that the chatbot kicks in will be personalized to that employee. And we also have a little bit of a different flows within the chatbot itself. So I'll kind of just jump it open and just kind of show you some ideas, right? You'll notice a couple of things. We're still given that recommendation approach, even on the employee experience. So that way we can always recommend jobs to your employees. But we're also giving your employees a quick access to refer friends or even ask some of those common FAQ questions that are more geared towards employees rather than candidates. And even now, if you have gigs, if you have learning content, we can sort of serve up some of those content directly within the chatbot. And you'll be able to quickly apply to a gig, apply to a job, refer a friend, or even just get some common questions like, hey, what's the Phenom vacation policy, as an example. We'll be able to sort of get that directly within the chatbot with the same UI view, same conversational experience that we've built out for even our candidate bot as well.
That's awesome. Now, I know a lot of companies and organizations have policies where they're required to post a job internally before externally. Is this the same case here? And does that show up in the bot differently if there is a job that is only posted internally before externally? And how is that configured? Is that something on the back end that you have an internal bot FAQ or an external bot FAQ?
Yeah, very good question. So there's really two approaches to this. When you're posting a job within the CRM, you have the ability to sort of dictate where you want to post that job. So you'll notice off the bat, even on this job card here, this job has been posted internal and external. I think all of our jobs here in Phenom are both internal and external. So I don't know that I'll be able to show you one that's just internal. But the idea here is if you have to post it internally, which we've heard from a lot of companies that sometimes they rather give their employees a chance before they post it externally. It will be just slightly different, right? You'll be able to come into your internal mobility and find that job, and you'll notice that from a job perspective, it'll just say internal. However, from an experience perspective, it's all the same. The only thing that's different is this job just won't show up on your career site. It'll only show up in your internal mobility. So when you're talking to the chatbot and when you're getting some of these job recommendations, you'll be able to, the bot will automatically tell you, is this job internal? Is it internal and external? And there might even be cases where maybe a job is only posted externally. Maybe it's a new role. Maybe it's something that a company wants to source from an external perspective. We'll be able to sort of make those distinctions within the internal mobility side, and the bot will also understand that. Now, when it comes to some of those FAQs, like you asked, there is a separate knowledge base for the employee experience, the internal mobility experience, where you'll be able to customize your FAQ content a little bit different than your candidate content. An employee cares more about some HR related items, some benefits items, some pay, vacation time off, PTO, right? A candidate, you might not necessarily want to give them all that information. So we've created the separation of knowledge bases so that you can manage your employee content a little bit different than your candidate content.
That's awesome. And I want to throw it over to a couple comments that came through. I saw Dorangela Gerardo Arena. I believe I'm saying that right, Jesus, but correct me if I'm wrong. She says an excellent tool for mapping people's interests. And I love that because when we shared Lauren's story at the top of the show, HR wasn't necessarily the traditional career path for an SDR, but she was able to find her interests and then go from there. And when she gets her CHRO job, I imagine that somebody in human resources will post her talent experience specialist role as an internal first because they've had so much success and keep the funnel going. And then a question came in on LinkedIn as well, which when there isn't a job available, can you suggest custom communities they can join for future communication?
Very good question. Yes, we've actually developed this diversity and inclusion tool within the employee experience that allows employees to sort of join different communities, whether it's diverse communities, job-specific communities, maybe volunteering type communities. We've sort of made that available for the employee to sort of join and be alerted when things like this happen. So yes, absolutely, that is another part of our entire employee experience suite.
That's amazing. And the reason why we're all remote right now, Jesus, I used to love stopping by your desk all the time and talking about Chatbot and the employee experience. But when you're remote, a lot of times we're looking for that sense of community, maybe not just for the next step in your job progression, but to, maybe do a Family Feud episode at 5
I was just about to mention that.
Or perhaps share a glass of wine with Jen Thomas, as she commented on LinkedIn. Those communities are there, and even for such things as women in tech or DE&I initiatives that you have as well. Jesus, thank you so much for joining. Before I let you go, any parting shots, anything you'd like to say before you pack your bags and move to Boston, like you teased at the beginning?
Yes, I will not move to Boston. I will stay in Philly. But I guess to sort of give that icebreaker moment, so everyone, I know I saw a couple of comments come in about that first job that you started with.
Yes,
I'll kind of give my experience. So I started at a small little Nestle Toll House baking the best cookies and brownies until I got tired of them and had to move on.
It reminds me of a Friends episode. My great grandmother got this recipe, a Nestle Toll House. The reason why I chose that question, Jesus, was to show how everyone's first job is very different from their job that they are today.
Absolutely.
And although I'm sure you were a wonderful baker and able to cook the best cookies, and I'm sure that I was a fantastic dishwasher, and Lauren was a spectacular sandwich artist. We all have progressions within our career, and it's great to see those mapped out through the employee experience and through the internal talent marketplace, as well as how to get there through upskilling and so on and so forth. But Jesus, I wish you the best. We'll catch up soon. Hopefully you'll join us in the office, in the studio at some point. And thanks again. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having me. Have a good rest of your Thursday, not Wednesday.
Exactly.
That's day.
Oh, awesome. But yes, so that was Phenom's employee experience, looking specifically at internal mobility as well as career pathing. And I think we shared a number of spectacular examples of how to create a success story very similar to Lauren's, and really career progression for your employees who you work so hard to get into the door. But before we sign off, please, you're here, subscribe, like the content, share it out if you found anything interesting. If you'd like to talk to me, Jesus, or Lauren, you can always shoot us an email at txl@phenompeople.com. And the other thing that I would like to share is if you missed last week's episode, it was spectacular. It was all around video, which is a huge topic for 2021. And it's about crafting user-generated content from within. So I could talk about it a little bit more at nausea. However, I'd rather just air this clip from Yair Lanson from Kaltura. Here's the clip.
Putting people now in front of a camera in a recruitment process instead of just written CV that kind of takes the face of the person, of the candidate, take it away and kind of hides it, can create some sort of bias. But I'll give you the flip side of it. It can create a lot of good. So instead of one person that's sitting and interviewing that candidate, since you took this online and you're doing a virtual video recruitment process, now 10 people can actually see that person. So if you're creating the right process around it, if just one person is interviewing it, that one person can do a lot of harm. But if this person now has a lot of checks and balances, like other 10 people, because you kind of democratize the process of interviewing, because it's online all of a sudden, this can be the checks and balances. So the technology is not good or bad. It's the process that you create and how the way that you harness it.
So that was Yair talking a little bit about how video can help in the battle against bias within the recruitment process. So definitely check out that episode. We covered so much more around video CVs, as well as capturing real content from your employees and potentially putting it on your employee experience and throughout the internal mobility journey, as well as career pathing. But as always, thank you all for joining me on Talent Experience Live. This has been an awesome episode. I love the interaction. Thank you, Kessa. Thank you, LinkedIn user. Thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Jeremy. I always love the interactions. Your questions are fantastic, and we can't wait to have you join us next Thursday at noon Eastern time once again. But in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.